Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to lesson 2 of 5 minutes Arabic with all Quran. In the previous lesson, we have learned about the three categories of Arabic words, namely isim, fi'il, and harf. If you haven't watched that video yet, do check it out. You may find the link in the description below. In today's lesson, we will be discussing more about isim and more specifically the identifiers for isim. We will learn how to identify an isim, what the usual forms of isim are, and why does the same kalima of isim have different harakah or vowels at the different parts of the Quran. Our scholars have given us some tips on how to identify an isim, and they are called the alamatul isim or identifiers of isim. Here are the 5 main identifiers of isim. The first sign that indicates a kalima or a word to be an isim is the tanween sign at the end of the kalima. As we have discussed in the previous lesson, there are 3 types of tanween. They are fathatan, kasratan, and dhammatan. Now, let's take a look at these examples. Huwa talibun jadidun, which means he is a new student. Looking at the kalimah talibun and jadidun, we can see that there is a tanween at the end of the kalimah. Thus, these two kalimah are isim. Next example. Hiwayatu Muhammadin kathiratun. Hiwayatu Muhammadin kathiratun, which means Muhammad's hobby is a lot. Or basically it means that Muhammad has a lot of hobbies. Here, we can see that Muhammadin and kathiratun has tanween at the end. Thus, these two kalimas are isim. Next, in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, verse 2 and 3, لَيْسَ لِوَقْعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ. We can see that the kalima كَاذِبَةٌ, خَافِضَةٌ, and رَافِعَةٌ all are isim because of the tanween at the end of the kalima. Next, the second sign that indicates a kalima to be an isim is the insertion of alif and lam at the front of the kalima. The alif lam at the start of the kalima changes a noun from its indefinite form to a definite form. For example, kitabun means a book. It can mean any book. However, once we insert the alif lam at the front of the kitabun like this, the rules state that we will need to remove the tanween at the end of the kalima. Thus, the kalima is now al-kitabu, which means the book. This refers to a specific or particular book which is known. Similarly, tilmidun means a male student, which can make reference to any male student. At-tilmidu means the student, and this refers to a specific or particular student. Now, let's take a look at this example. يذهب التلميذ إلى الفصل, which means the male student is going to the class. In this example, we can see that there are two kalimas that begin with alif lam. They are at-tilmidhu and al-fasli. Therefore, we can conclude that these two kalimas are isim. The third sign that indicates a kalima to be an isim is the sign of the kasrah at the end of the kalima, and the kalima is after a harful jar. A harful jar is a group of hurufs or particles that will make the kalima that comes after it be in a jar position, and one of the signs of being in a jar position is having a kasrah. These are some of the common harful jar. Min, which means from, ila, which means to, an, which means from, ala, which means on, fi, which means in or at, bi, which means with, ka, which means is like or is similar to, and li, which means for. In short, if you see any kalimah or words in the Quran that is after any of these harful jar and also has a kasrah at the end, it is most likely an isim. For example, ji'tu minal madrasati, which means I came from school. Here, we can see that the al-madrasati is an isim because number one, it has an alif lam at the front, and number two, it comes after a harfu jar, and number three, because it has a kasrah at the end of the kalima. Take note that by default, the kalima al-madrasa has a dhamma sign, al-madrasatu. However, because of the harfu jar, which is min, the kalima al-madrasatu now takes a kasra sign. It becomes min al-madrasati. The fourth identifier of an isim is when two isims are found side by side, with the second isim having the sign of a kasrah, and they make reference to each other. Most of these, though not exclusive, are possessive nouns. The first kalima is called a mudaf or possession, where else the second kalima is called mudafun ilayhi, which means the possessor. For example, sayyaratu al-mudarrisi, which means the car of the teacher, or basically the teacher's car. In this case, the kalima sayyaratu is the mudaf, which is the possession, where else al-mudarrisi is the mudafun ilayhi, which is the possessor or the owner. In the next example, Rasulullahi, we can see that the kalimah Rasulu is the mudaf, which is the possession, where else the kalimah Allahi is the mudafun ilayhi, which is the possessor or the owner. So in this case, the phrase Rasulullahi means messenger of Allah or Allah's messenger. The fifth identifier of an isim is that only isim can appear after a vocative particle. Let's look at these examples. In the first example, we have Ya Rajulu, which means oh man. We see that the word after the vocative particle of O is Rajulu. Thus, Rajulu has to be an isim. Next, we have Ya Rasulallah, which means O Messenger of Allah. The kalimah Rasulallah comes after the vocative article of Ya or O. Thus, Rasulallah must be an isim. In the next segment, test yourself to see if you are able to identify the isim in the following verses of the Quran. If yes, which of the 5 identifiers gave it away? Let's get started. Let's look at Surah Al-Fatiha verse 2. Using the identifiers that you have learned just now, are you able to identify where the isims are in this verse? Now let's go through the answers. The first isim is Alhamdu, and the identifier is the alif lam at the front. The second isim is Allahi, and the identifier is the kasrah at the end, and also it comes after the harfu jar of li. The third isim is Rabbi, and the identifier is the kasrah at the end. And the fourth isim is Al-Alamin, and the identifier is the alif lam at the front. Were you able to identify all the isim? Well done. Thank you for being with us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with your loved ones. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.